Artemis Fowl, Chapter 9, Part 6. Holly went on alone. She had to see for herself if Fowl's corpse was really here. It would be with the gold. Of that she was certain. The same family portraits glared down at her, but now they seemed rather smug. Holly was tempted to lose a few blasts into them from her Neutrino 2000. But that would be against the rules. If Artemis Fowl had beaten them, then that was that. She descended the stairway to her cell. The door was still swinging slightly from the biobomb concussion. A selenium flare ricocheted around the room like a trapped bolt of blue lightning. Holly stepped inside, half afraid of what she might or might not see. There was nothing dead at any rate, just gold. 200 ingots approximately, and they were piled on the mattress of her cot. Nice and neat in military rows. Oh, good old Butler, the only human ever to take a troll on and actually win. Commander, are you receiving? Over. Affirmative, Captain. Body count? Negative on bodies, sir. I found the rest of the ransom, though. There was a long silence. Leave it, Holly. Leave it. You know the rules. We are pulling out. But, sir, there must be a way. Foley broke in on the conversation. But nothing, Captain. I'm counting down the seconds until daylight here, and I don't like our odds if we have to exit at high noon. Holly sighed. It made sense. The people could choose their exit time as long as they left before the field disintegrated. It was just galled her to think they'd been beaten by a human. And that, an adolescent human. She took a last look around her cell. A big ball of hatred had been born here, she realized, and it would have to be dealt with sooner or later. Holly jammed her pistol back into its holster. Preferably sooner, she thought. Fowl was the winner this time, but someone like him wouldn't be able to rest on his laurels. He would be back with some other money-making scheme, and when he arrived, he would find Holly Short waiting for him. Not only waiting, but waiting with a big gun and a smile. The ground was soft by the time-stop perimeter. Half a millennium's bad drainage from the medieval walls had transformed the foundations into a virtual bog. So that was where mulch surfaced. The soft ground wasn't the only reason for choosing that exact spot. The other reason was the smell. A good tunnel dwarf can pick up the scent of gold through half a mile of granite bedrock, and Mulch Diggums had one of the best noses in the business. The hover trolley floated virtually unguarded. 2 of the retrieval's finest were stationed beside the recovered ransom. But at the moment, they were having a little giggle at their stricken commander. "'E can't half chuck it, can't 'e, Chicks?" Chicks nodded, mimicking Root's spewing technique. Chicks' pantomiming antics provided the perfect cover for a spot pilfering. Mulch gave his tubes a clearing before clambering from the tunnel. The last thing he needed was a sudden burst of gas to alert the LEP of his presence. He needn't have worried. He could have slapped Chick's Verbal in the face with a wet stink worm, and the sprite wouldn't have noticed. In matters of seconds, he had transferred 2 dozen ingots into the tunnel. It was the easiest job he had ever pulled. Mulch had to stifle a giggle as he dropped the last 2 bars down the hole. Julius had really done him a favor getting him involved in this whole affair. Things couldn't have worked out much better for him. Now he was free as a bird, rich, and best of all, he was presumed dead. By the time the LEP realized that the gold was missing, Mulch Diggums would be half a continent away. if they realized it at all. The dwarf lowered himself into the ground. It would take several trips to move his treasure trove, but it would be worth the delay. With this kind of money, he could take early retirement. He would have to completely disappear, of course, but a plan was already forming in his devious mind. He would live above ground for a while, masquerade as a human dwarf with an aversion to light, perhaps buy a penthouse with thick blinds, maybe in Manhattan or Monte Carlo. It might seem odd, of course, a dwarf shutting himself away from the sun, but then again, he would be obscenely rich, and humans would accept any story, however outlandish it may be. When there's something in it for them, preferably something green and folds, they'll believe about anything. Artemis could hear a voice calling his name. There was a face behind the voice, but it was blurred and hard to make out. His father, perhaps? Father! The word was strange in his mouth, rarely unused, rusty. Artemis opened his eyes. Butler was leaning over him. Artemis, you're awake! Oh, Butler, it's you. Artemis got to his feet, head spinning. He expected Butler's hand at his elbow to steady him, and it didn't come. Juliet was laying on a chaise lounge, dribbling into the cushion. Obviously, the draft hadn't worn off of her yet. It was just sleeping pills, Butler. Harmless. The manservant's eyes had a dangerous glint to them. Explain yourself! Artemis rubbed his eyes. Later, Butler. I'm feeling a bit... Butler stepped into his path. Artemis, my sister is lying, drugged out on the couch. She was almost killed, so you explain yourself now. Artemis realized that he'd been given an order. He considered being offended, then decided that perhaps Butler was right. He had gone too far. I didn't tell you about the sleeping pills because you'd fight them. It's only natural. And it was imperative, the plan, that we all go in to sleep immediately. The plan? Artemis lowered himself into the comfortable chair. The time field was the key to this whole affair. It's the LEP's ace in the hole. It's what has made them unbeatable for all these years. Any incident can be contained. That and the biobomb make a formidable combination. So why did we have to be drugged? Said Butler. Artemis smiled. Look out the window. Don't you see? They're gone. It's over. Butler glanced through the net curtains. The light was bright and clear, not a hint of blue. Nevertheless, the manservant was unimpressed. Well, they're gone for now. I bet they're going to be back tonight. I guarantee it. No, it's against the rules. We beat them. That's it. Game over. Butler raised an eyebrow. The sleeping pills, Artemis? Not to be distracted, I see. Butler's answer was an implacable silence. The sleeping pills. Very well. I had to think of a way to escape the time field. I trawled through the book, but there was nothing, not a clue. The people themselves have not yet developed a way. So I went back to their Old Testament, back when their lives and ours were intertwined. You know the stories. Elves that made shoes during the night, sprites that cleaned houses, back when we coexisted to a certain extent. Magical favors in exchange for fairy forts. The big one, of course, was Santa Claus. Butler's eyebrows nearly jumped off the front of his face. Santa Claus? Artemis raised his palms. I know. I was a tad skeptical myself, but apparently our little corporate image Santa Claus is not descended from a Turkish saint. He is in a shadow of San Claus, the third king of the Frond Elfin dynasty. He is known as San the Deluded. Not a great title as titles goes. Admittedly, de Claus thought that the greed of the mud people in this kingdom could be assured by distributing lavish gifts. He would marshal all the great wizards once a year and have them throw up a great time stop over the vast regions. And then flocks of sprites would be sent out to deliver presents while the humans were asleep. Of course, it didn't work. Human greed never can be assuaged, especially by gifts. Butler frowned. What if the humans, we, that is, what if we had woken up? Ah, yes, excellent question. The matter is, we wouldn't wake up. That is the nature of the time stop. Whatever your state of consciousness going in, that's how you stay. You can neither wake up nor fall asleep. You must have noticed the fatigue in your bones these last few hours. Yet your mind would not let you sleep. Butler nodded. Things were getting clearer in a roundabout sort of way. So my theory was that the only way to escape the time field was to simply fall asleep. Our own consciousness was all that kept us imprisoned. You risked an awful lot on this theory, Artemis. Well, it's not just a theory. We did have a test subject, you know. Well, who? Ah, Angeline. Yes, my mother. Because of her narcotic-induced slumber, she moved with the natural order of time, unhindered by the time field. If she had not, I would have simply surrendered to the LEP and submitted to their mind wipe. Butler snorted. He doubted that. So because we could not fall asleep naturally, I simply administered us all a dose of Mother's sleeping pills. Simple. You cut it pretty fine, though. Another minute? Agreed, the boy nodded. Things were tense there at the end. It was necessary in order to double bluff the LEP. He paused so that Butler could process the information. Well, am I forgiven? Butler sighed. On the chase lounge, Juliet snored like a drunken sailor, and he smiled suddenly. Yes, Artemis, all is forgiven. But just one thing. Yes? Never again. Fairies are too human. You're right, said Artemis, the crow's feet deepening around his eyes. Never again. We shall restrict ourselves to more tasteful ventures in the future. Legal, though I can't really promise. Butler nodded. It was close enough. Now, young master, shouldn't we check on your mother? Artemis grew paler, if that were possible. Could the captain have reneged on her promise? She would certainly be entitled to. Yes, I suppose we should. Let Juliet rest. She earned it. He cast his eyes upward along the stairs. It had been too much to hope for that he could trust the fairy. After all, he had held her captive against her will. He berated himself silently, imagining parting with all those millions for the promise of a wish. Oh, the gullibility. Then the loft door opened. Butler drew his weapon instantly. Artemis, behind me, there's intruders. The boy waved him away. No, Butler, I don't think so. His heart pounding in his ears. Blood pulsed in his fingertips. Could it be? Could it possibly be? A figure appeared on the stairs, wraith-like in a toweled robe, her hair wet from the shower. Artie, she called. Artie, are you there? Artemis wanted to answer. He wanted to race up the grand stairway, arms outreached, but he couldn't. His cerebral functions had deserted him. Angeline Fowl descended, one hand resting lightly on the banister. Artemis had forgotten how graceful his mother was. Her bare feet skipped over the carpeted steps, and soon she was standing before him. Morning, darling, she said brightly, as though it were just another day. Mother? Stammered Artemis. Well, give me a hug. Artemis stepped into his mother's embrace. It was warm and strong, and she was wearing perfume. He felt like the boy he was. Oh, I'm sorry, Artie, she whispered into his ear. Sorry for what? Oh, for everything. For the last few months. I haven't been myself, but things are gonna change. Time to stop living in the past. Artemis felt a tear on his cheek. He wasn't sure whose tear it was. And I don't have a present for you. A present? Said Artemis. Of course, sang his mother, spinning around him. Don't you know what day it is? Day? It's Christmas Day, you silly boy. Christmas Day. Presents are traditional, are they not? Yes, thought Artemis. Traditional. Santa Claus. And look at this place. It's drab as a mausoleum. Butler? The manservant hurriedly pocketed his Sig Sauer. Yes, ma'am. Please get on the phone to Brown Thomas, the platinum set number. Reopen my account. Tell Helen I want a Yuletide makeover. The works. Oh, and wake up, Juliet. I want my things moved into the main bedroom. That attic is far too dusty. Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am. Angeline Fowl linked her son's arm. Now, Artie, I want to know everything. First of all, what has happened here? Remodeling, said Artemis. The old doorway was riddled with damp. Angeline frowned, completely unconvinced. I see. And how about school? Have you decided on a career? While his mouth answered these everyday questions, Artemis's mind was in turmoil. He was a boy again. His life was going to change utterly. His plans would have to be much more devious than usual if they were to escape his mother's attention. But it would be worth it. Angeline Fowl was wrong. She had brought him a Christmas present. The end. For your information, this is a series. This was book number 1. If you would like to continue with Artemis Fowl, you guys can look into the next books. And remember, there will be a movie hopefully coming out here this summer. And I hope you enjoyed the story.